Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ali Rushdi, and I graduated from the MBA program from York University in 2019. And currently, I'm an omnichannel manager at Boehringer Ingelheim, Canada. It is my immense pleasure to be your host and moderator for today's panel, Get Hired, What Recruiters Look For in New Grads. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone in attendance today. We do have some attendees who've been to our Level Up sessions in the past, so thank you so much for coming again. And some of you who may be attending their very first Level Up session. For those of you attending for the very first time, the Level Up event series is a program that invites alumni leaders to help new grads navigate life and work after getting their degree. The series covers everything from professional networking to career development and life skills. Before we get started, I want to begin by offering York's land acknowledgement. Although we aren't all in the same location, we recognize many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaronto has been taken care of by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. If at any time you need help with this experience or have questions about the content, feel free to click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, and our team is there to help you. Thank you so much. And now I'm honored to introduce you to our alumni speakers, Judith Fernando, Christine Madigan, and Stuart Pay. Panelists, please turn on your cameras and join me on our virtual stage. We're now going to do a round of self-introductions. Please share your current role, what you studied at York, and your fondest memory of student life. Judith, why don't we start with you?
For sure. Thanks, Ali. Hi, everyone. My name is Judith Fernando. I am a campus recruiter here at IBM, focusing on the consulting practice. I've been at IBM for about 2 years and just love working with students and new grads. I studied the Bachelor of Human Resource Management at York, graduated in 2018, and my fondest memory would be the Multicultural Week. I came in as an international student, so absolutely loved participating in Multicultural Week and learning about all the different cultures as well.
Great. Christine, can we go with you next, please?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Christine Madigan, and I am currently a talent acquisition program specialist with Tormont Cat. I actually studied concurrent ed and did an undergrad in psychology and graduated in 2017. And my fondest memory would be living on campus first year at Bethune.
Great. And last but not least, Stuart.
Thanks, Ali. Hello, everyone. My name is Stuart Pay. I am a talent sourcing partner focusing on early careers at Aviva Canada. I studied at Atkinson back then. It was a BBA, and I got an HR certificate back in 2007. My fondest memory, in first year, I was lucky enough to be a York ambassador. So essentially that was a tour guide. So it was really fun as a commuting student. I didn't have anywhere to live. I wasn't lucky enough to get res. There was only 4 buildings back then that you could live in. So I didn't live on res, and it was a nice place to leave my bag and take prospective students and people around the campus. It was much smaller. We had a great chance to talk about the future and all the things, the amenities that we would have. And definitely all you students have enjoyed it that I did not have a chance to enjoy when I went to university.
Great. So this is amazing because we've got so much experience and such wide industries all in one space together. This is going to be an amazing session. So thank you so much for these introductions. We're now going to move into the panel discussion. Panelists, if you feel like you have something, so I'm going to address these questions to you. And if you feel like you really want to, if you have something to offer for that question, feel free to add on. We're going to keep this fairly informal and conversational. I think we can start by talking about the industry that each of you is from and the norms. How are most young people finding jobs these days? For example, are they hired through applying online, getting an interview? Are they attending job fairs, working their networks? What kind of things are you seeing in your industries these days? And Judith, let's start with you on this one.
For sure. We're seeing almost everything you mentioned, to be honest, Ali. There's a combination of everything that gets involved in getting hired. For IBM, one of the main things is that you have to apply online. There's a few processes to follow, so that's kind of that formal process. But in terms of attending job fairs, networking events, highly recommend attending these. Typically, IBM sends a lot of high executive reps to these events. So if they're able to make a connection with you, see great potential, they share this feedback back with the recruiters who are then able to find your application on the system and move you through the process. So definitely recommend all of the different events out there.
For sure. Stuart?
Yeah, so we are in the financial services and insurance. So typically, again, most of our positions are posted online, and that's where a lot of the early careers people start off in terms of claims and underwriting and direct sales. Again, networking is very helpful if you have that in place, but if not, for especially those without experience, job fairs are kind of a great place to get your foot and at least learn about the industries that all of us work in.
Great. And Christine?
Yes, I would agree with both points. I think it's really important from the standpoint of attending different networking events or career fairs because you're having that one-on-one face time that your resume doesn't allow you to always have. So if there's ever going to be a representative or a face to the brand or company that you're interested in, make sure you make yourself available to be there because it really only takes 30 seconds to make a positive impression.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So what I'm hearing here is definitely apply online, but also make sure you're showing up and showing your presence at these job fairs that are happening. And so networking is a huge part of this, right? And I think, it's important to understand how much value you would place on a candidate's networking efforts and professional connections, especially for those that are just starting their careers. Stuart, how important do you think networking is when it comes to, the overall job application process? And is there something candidates can do to stand out, especially at these job fairs where sometimes the number of students to industry professionals, can be 50s to 1, 30s to 1? What can you do to really connect with an industry professional and make sure they remember you?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think one of the things that for networking is really important is spending that 2 minutes at least to understand what the company does. It really does elevate the conversation when you at least know what they do. Ideally, asking employer a little bit more about themselves rather than, hey, what do you guys do? And that really starts the tone of the conversation when you haven't looked at it at all. And I get it. When you attend fairs, sometimes you don't know. It's a surprise fair. But you do want to at least Google and have a sense of what it is. For example, at us at Aviva, it's just, hey, you're an insurance company. We know, walking up to myself and say, hey, I know Aviva does insurance. How do you stand out to your competitors? And the tone of the conversation changes a lot. We're all three of us are happy to do the song and dance about how great our companies are and what we do, but hopefully you've already done that research already and you're ready to bring something else to the table. And that definitely makes you stand out. You don't have to go overboard and tell me about stock portfolios of how we're doing investment wise, but just the bare minimum is really helpful to kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I feel like the recruiter or the industry professional is a person as well, and they just want to have a conversation. So sometimes it's important to just do a little bit of homework beforehand, and then have a more informed conversation. Definitely. Christine, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's all about what you bring to the table for your conversation and where your impact kind of statement's going to be. Whether it be you do a quick search on the mission, vision, and values and how you can tie that to something that you're passionate about. But it's having that one piece that kind of stands out or differentiates you as well during that conversation, whether that be you telling me what you do outside of school that makes you who you are or ties you to your passion. It's kind of that one thing that goes a little bit of a step further that can then kind of close the loop on our full conversation. So absolutely important.
Yeah. Judith, do you want to add anything?
Don't have much to add, to be honest. Christine and Stuart have definitely covered it well. The one thing I would say, which ties off of what Christine was mentioning, was practice your elevator pitch. Think about what is your potential and what you can offer to the company when you try to speak to some of our representatives.
Yeah, definitely. I think the elevator pitch is such an important tool because like every single interview you're in, that's the first question you're going to get asked. Tell us about yourself. And I feel like long-winded 10, 15-minute answers are not going to do you a lot of good. So it's good to have something short and sweet and to the point that highlights all of your main accomplishments. Should have something like that ready. So speaking of interviewing, any tips on interviewing etiquette that everyone should know? And Christine, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say first and foremost, you want to make sure that whoever you're connecting with that kind of booked your interview, you're thanking them, you're confirming them. That's one thing that I'm starting to notice. Just confirm that you will be there. That is fantastic. We're excited to meet you too. When it comes to the actual interview itself, arrive early. Don't be in a panic. Something that I used to do before an interview is I would actually drive to the location. I would time it to make sure I knew where I had to go, if it was a parking garage, if it was a parking lot, how I could get there on time. And then be presentable, of course, and do your research about the company. So at this point, you are having your interview, so know what you are talking about and know what you are talking to.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like, I feel like when you're in that situation, there's enough stress about the interview itself, and you don't want to have to stress about being late or, finding your way. Definitely, I think that makes sense. Stuart, do you want to?
Yeah, just to jump on the other side of things, if you are doing a virtual interview, which happens a lot more as well, it's important that you have proper lighting. It's important that you're not in the dark. It's important you pick a quiet location and you have everything kind of aligned beforehand. You can definitely get dislodged in your train of thought if someone opens the door and you're like, oh, and it just it takes a while for you to get back into place. So I think, as we all did momentarily ago, practice the tech, make sure everything's logged in, make sure everything's ready. That stuff, just push it aside and make sure you're comfortable, because when you're in the interview, you don't want to think about stressing out and sweating about your monitor or your camera's not operating. Not like we had any problems here today. Everyone was perfect, including myself. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Making sure tech's working and there's no distractions. It's so important. I've been in an interview once and it was virtual where I forgot to lock my cats in the other room and they basically jumped behind me and caused a fair bit of distraction. But I don't know, I think it might have helped me in one case because the interviewer liked cats. So, Judith, anything else you want to add?
I would say just be confident, be prepared and confident and able to just showcase your potential, be authentic at the interviews, be able to share your story and be confident in what you're saying.
Yeah, confidence goes far, definitely. Um, so Judith, what are the two top things that a candidate can do to stand out in an interview?
For sure. I know we touched upon this briefly, but the top two things, in my opinion, would be being prepared and asking good questions at the interview. And for me, when I say being prepared, what I mean is take the time to review the job description. Think about what the job is asking for and how you have relevant experience, whether it's indirect or direct experience, and prepare to the best that you can to speak to what the role's asking for and tailor your responses to what the role's asking for. So what I like to do is look at the job description and create a little table for yourself. On the left side, put together what you think are the most important job description, characteristics, qualifications the role's looking for. And on the right side, think about examples of how you've displayed this in some of your past experiences, something you're curious about or learning. So try to jot all of those down. And while preparing, think of the STAR methodology. I'm sure all of you have heard of it by now. Situation, task, action, result. It's always important to provide examples so the interviewer can understand the impact you've created at the job and also what potential you can bring. It also shows us your line of thinking, if anything. So make sure you frame your responses in that STAR methodology. And with all these examples you're providing, tailor it back best that you can to the role you're applying for. So for example, if you're applying for a consultant role, you will notice client relationship skills, stakeholder management, a lot of soft skills will be listed out. So in your examples, try to show more of those examples where you're able to showcase, how you've managed clients in the past, how your communication skills, maybe through school projects, you've led a school case competition and you've got X results. So be able to structure your responses that way, and that really goes a long way. Again, research the company, and it's so easy to research the company these days. Follow them on social media. I do it myself, even if it's TikTok, even if it's Instagram. Those tidbits of information will definitely be great talking points for when you're at the interview. And then with your research, you do ask good questions. And this is the chance to be able to stand out and ask very unique questions that maybe some other candidates are not thinking about. So ask them about the role, about the industry, about, how something in the industry, whatever's going on in the industry, how that's impacting the organization and the overall role, for example. So be prepared to ask really good questions. And then the final thing I would say is use everything that you've done, all your research in sending a good thank you note. So make sure you thank the interviewer for their time and use those unique questions you asked. Hopefully you've been able to stand out at that point, build a conversation around the questions you've asked, and try to reiterate your interest by saying, following up on the conversation we had on XYZ, I learned this, and this is how I can contribute further. And then an additional step, that little table you created for prepare, send that, obviously polish it up a bit after the interview, make it relevant again, but send that as in addition to the thank you note. And it really goes to show how much research you've put in, how prepared you are, and you're going above and beyond and really trying to showcase yourself as that perfect candidate for the role.
Yeah, those are some great tips. The star format, or some people I guess call the car format, that's really important, right? In terms of structuring your responses. I remember when I was applying to get into the consulting industry long time back, someone actually told me that the rack format is even more effective, where you start with results, because it's almost like, folks in those industries are very results driven. So if you start with results, especially if it's a good result, it can be even more powerful. And I think something as simple as a thank you note is so important, right? Like, if interviewers are meeting so many different candidates, just something as simple as that can make them feel, that it wasn't just about the job, that you actually liked meeting them, and you got value out of that conversation. Those are great. Thank you. Stuart, Christine, do you guys want to add anything?
I would just say be authentic. It's a time where you can be nervous. It feels overwhelming. You kind of feel like you're going over the different answers that you've kind of researched in your head, but just be who you are, because we want to know who you are, what you do outside of work. We want to have that personal connection as well, because even that personal connection builds more of a relationship. So be who you are and ask good questions to align with what Judith was saying.
Authenticity.
Yeah,
Right?
and to further a little bit about to what Judith was saying, I think it's a good idea for students to ask the manager about their leadership style, their development style. How are they developing new grads? What is the processes in place? How are they developing? And I think the mindset is not to worry about your promotion, but worry about the scope and the wideness of the role that you're going to move into. I think a lot of students get derailed going in. It's like, I'm going to be this in the next 5 years. Go in there with trying to be a subject matter expert. Go in, learn as much as you can, and worry about, like, again, scope, and don't worry too much about elevating to the next stop right away.
Right.
And that's a good way to looking at things.
Yeah, definitely. I think authenticity, just coming up as your authentic self, is so important, because people can notice, right? And of course, it's not like these are personal relationships. It is still a corporate and a work environment. So maybe you can't be totally authentic, but the closest you can get, I think it can really make a difference. And Stuart, to your point, it is a two-way fit, right? Sometimes in this frenzy to find a job, you forget that, even if you get a job, to succeed in that role, your culture, your values have to fit with the organization's culture and values. So it's good to evaluate all those things when you're applying. So I guess before you can get an interview, you have to apply, and making sure your resume stands out is really important. So Stuart, what do you think makes a good resume, and what can you do to make it stand out, especially for someone, let's say, that is a recent grad, has little or no work experience?
Yeah, I think Christine touched upon it before. I think for those, especially with no experience, don't be afraid to add passion, hobbies, and interests on your resume.
Hmm.
That's something that will stand out. A lot of resumes now are starting to look very similar, just in terms of templates and with support. So they're all looking the same. Having those passions and those interests makes you stand out. And the story that I think about is that I had someone who wrote, they have a passion of cooking, but then in brackets they wrote bolognese recipe. And I said, okay, I need to find out all about this. So I spoke with her and I'm like, hey, what do you know about Aviva? Then we got to the bolognese thing, and I was like, what is this thing with bolognese? And she described that she went to a family gathering and she tried this excellent bolognese recipe, and since then she couldn't ask for the recipe, so she's been kind of reverse engineering, and every month they get together and have their own bolognese eating pasta. And I just think, wow, that's, organization, repetition, like these are fun things about you that only you can talk about, and it's
Right.
dissimilar to like someone else. So it was really just fun, and then the tone of the conversation changed, was more relaxed, and then the interview was really good. So
Hmm.
I think that's a good thing. And just to further that, don't be afraid to go to 2 pages if you're there. Like if you, oh, I have 1 page and I can't do it, don't worry. Just go. Follow up will always be. You can go 2 pages if you had interest in hobbies, and just add a little bit more. Just don't say cooking. Talk about what you want to do, like baking or something else. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think so. You're so right. Transferable skills, right? You might not have work experience, but maybe you play an instrument, maybe you're in a team sport, and there's transferable skills that you can highlight. So you should definitely include those. And um, I think that um, I think that just there's always this anxiety about people wanting to keep their resume to one page. So it's good to hear that sometimes it's not as much of an issue. Don't be afraid to go to 2 pages, especially if it's something that's really relevant. Christine, do you want to add any thoughts to that?
Yeah, just very similar. I want to know kind of who you are outside of even academic. Helps build rapport, build a conversation, helps me understand if you're a go-getter, if you're someone who wants to be mentored, if you're someone who has a passion for maybe even the industry itself, maybe high school jobs, university jobs as you were going to school. That can also be a conversation piece. Kind of learning the business from the ground up is what we always say. So even if it's an interest that we can correlate on the back end that doesn't really look like it would be a fit on the front end, it could be if we have that conversation and I know that that was in your past.
Yeah, definitely. And so would you recommend someone join, like, let's say, an industry association, to show that interest, maybe even attend their fairs or their meetings? Is that something that you would recommend?
Absolutely. Because to me, that shows that you want to grow and you're invested in your own growth. I think when an employer recognizes that you're invested, we want to invest in you as well.
Definitely. Judith, I think we'll jump to a new question and we'll start with you on this one. So on LinkedIn, we can easily see who's in an HR or recruiting position at a company. So is it ever appropriate to, directly message a recruiter? And what's the best approach for success in your opinion?
For sure. Yes. So if you are able to identify who the hiring manager or recruiter is, definitely go ahead and reach out, but be intentional in your reach out. Make sure you're outlining what the role is, why you're qualified for the role, and be intentional in why you're reaching out to them, whether it's a coffee chat to learn about the role or to let them know you've applied and reiterating your interest. So definitely be intentional in all of your reach outs. The one thing I would say though is recruiters get tons of messages every day, so it is very time consuming to get through all the messages. So don't get discouraged if you don't hear back. Instead, what I would actually also recommend is look up the hiring managers, the hiring teams, or even the teams that you would potentially be joining and ask them for a coffee chat to see if they'll be able to share some ideas around or share their experience with you. And that way you have more talking points for your interview. You now have a connection with someone that's on the team. And if
Right.
you're able to create a really good impression, they may even refer you to the role, which then we get your application directly as well in some cases. So definitely go ahead with reaching out to the recruiters, but don't get discouraged. That's the one piece I would say. Don't get discouraged. Just continue reaching out. And what I've also noticed is some of our recent hires, maybe the new grads, are very eager to give back. So they're very willing to take the time to help out some of their colleagues that are graduating as well. So use your network and try to reach out to your LinkedIn community to try and continue to learn a bit more as well.
Yeah, I think you made some great points there. Definitely, reach out to the alumni community. There's quite a few of us out there, and it's so true. I feel like the initial, like the gut reaction to not hearing back from someone that, let's say you carefully created a message for is a lot of disappointment. But, what I try to remind even some other students that I speak to is that at the end of the day, this is a person and they have X amount of capacity. And, if they're getting 100 messages, as much as they would want to respond to every single one, they're just not going to be able to. And that's not really, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's more the fact that they're just dealing with a lot of work, right? Yeah. Christine, do you want to add anything?
I don't know. I don't know that I have anything additional there to share.
Sure. Stuart, what about you?
Yeah, I think the best thing to add on to Judith is, especially for us, timing is everything. It's important to recognize that this time of year, like as Judith mentioned, we get so many emails, so many messages. I think if you are someone who recognizes the window when it comes to the cycle of recruitment, if you kind of plan yourself according, and maybe right now is the time that we're not going to give you the most opportunity, unfortunately. But if you do it kind of at the off window when we're not recruiting all the time, you'll get
Right.
us to talk to you. We'll have lots of time to go through and have those casual conversations that aren't rushed and really give you the time to talk about it. But you have to be kind of planned in that approach. If you're looking for something right now, it's not ideal. But if you are looking for something down the line, you just plan, at the windows when recruitment is not heavy, then all of a sudden we have all the time in the world to give you some insights and to give you naming, all those different things. And then one quick add-on when sending resumes to us in general, because this is something just on a side note, it's so important. Naming conventions mean everything. So please don't do my resume 2024. Put your last name, the company name, the year. We will find you better once we download your resume into a folder. When you do the other way around, I've been guilty of not able to find those candidates again. So help us on a little bit that side too, and when you're sending your resumes over, because that's part of the the process when it comes to networking, is to send your resume.
Right. Yeah, something that's so simple, right? I mean, if you don't put your name on your resume, like on the file name, then it might get lost in the onslaught of all the resumes that you're getting.
I'm guilty. I did it before I really understood that, and there's more. I just can't write my every single time because there are lots of other people that my resume, and all of a sudden there's 10 of them, and I don't know who they are anymore.
Right.
So, yeah.
Long-term planning, it seems like what you're saying is really important. So just like you'd book a cottage for the summer 6 months ahead, that's kind of how you want to start reaching out to recruiters. Is there, so what is the off season then, I guess, like for the insurance and financial industry? What's the right time for someone to approach you when you have capacity to really get into those conversations and answer those questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, a lot of the financial services and us do new grad programs, and they all kind of start in September. So usually right after October, November is kind of slow for us, and that's when typically you'll have an opportunity to chat because we build up for summer opportunities, and then with starting dates in September. So that definitely is kind of the low season for us, and we're not running around on campus as much anymore. When we get to November, December, it's really quiet at that time of year. So we're just now building acquisitions and getting details out. So that's a good time.
Judith, Christine, is it the same for you in your industries as well, or?
I think it depends for us personally just on what roles kind of are open at that time, where we are in the cycle of filling that role. So it can really change. I would say summer is a quieter time. But then also on the flip side, we're also ramping up for that September start. So it really kind of depends where you catch us in the cycle. I can't say this month would be the best month to reach out, just because there's overlap and lots of roles open. So it's really, it comes down to kind of luck if you can catch us at a time that we're able to reach back out. But if not, and you're a standout to us, we will keep your resume and we will reach back out. I can promise you that.
Fair enough. Judith, do you want to add anything, or?
I was going to say exactly the same as Nicole. We're always on something, but summer is kind of when we're planning for the rest of the year to start off in the fall for our new grad programs and intern programs. So summer tends to be good. But when you do reach out, also, maybe when students reach out, you can also have the opportunity of like adding a line and saying, even if it's a future connect, that way we know at least in the future, we'll keep in mind and we'll try to connect back.
Right. Fair enough. So I'm going to open this question to everyone, and I guess it's a bit contentious, but we've been talking about LinkedIn, and over the last 6 months to a year, there have been layoffs across industries, across companies, and I personally have been seeing this trend where some employees after they've been laid off will post about the fact that they've been laid off on LinkedIn, and some tend to take a positive approach to it, where they're just talking about like how much they've learned and giving a shout out to all of the colleagues that they worked with. Some tend to go down a negative approach, and I guess my question is, how do you see this as something that it facilitates recruitment for that person later on? Because sometimes people also use this kind of a post as a way to let LinkedIn know that they're open to work. So does it make sense to do things a certain way?
I can go first. Interesting question, to be honest. But what I would say is always be positive. You don't want to be on social media bad-mouthing your previous employer or anyone else. It will not create a good experience for your future employers. Maybe your future hiring manager looks at your LinkedIn, one of your posts, and sees you've said, maybe it's not the worst thing, but you've said something that's not so positive. It may make the hiring manager think that this is the kind of personality that they're trying to bring onto the team, and that might not be a good fit. So always be positive, share what you've learned, update your LinkedIn to show you're open to work, you're looking for opportunities, and the community will definitely try to help you out. On the back end, when we use LinkedIn Recruiter, for example, if you put open to work, we're able to see. If you follow the company, we're able to see. So definitely be more on the positive side, but be authentic about what you've learned and your experiences when you do some of these LinkedIn posts.
And just to jump on there, I agree with putting the open to work, because as a recruiter, we do have that view. So I think that's your best bet, is to let us know that you are looking for an opportunity. And then don't just network within LinkedIn, network with everyone that you know and you have, that you've built rapport with up to this day. I think it's really important. Yes, LinkedIn is a fantastic tool and we all use it every day probably. But it's really important to think about everything else that can encompass and support that journey.
Yeah, for sure. So what
Yeah,
do you want to?
Yeah, and to echo the two, positive is always important. And then also, just as a quick operations side too, updating LinkedIn on location preference is good, whether you want to work from hybrid, whether you want to work from home. All these little details are helpful for us to kind of navigate, to figure out whether you are kind of the right fit for us to reach out to you. So this is kind of for us to know that we can ping you with a message. But again, these are all learning experiences. We've all gone through it in our careers. Some people have gone through multiple rounds of layoffs, and it all teaches us a lot about about ourselves as well. So you can speak to that and talk about that experience, and that's helpful as well.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our panel discussion. Thank you so much, panelists. This was an amazing discussion. I know I learned a lot. Now we're going to take some questions from the audience. So audience members, please feel free to enter your questions into the Q&A if you haven't already. So the first question that we have comes from the watch party of students and alumni that we're having at the Alumni Lounge at the Kiel campus. And the question is, do you have any advice for how to stay positive after several interviews with no response, or advice on how to bounce back from that experience?
I can take a stab at going at it first. So I can imagine how overwhelming it is. I've been through it myself. And it's easy for me to say, keep going, but you have to be intentional with what you're doing. So it is very time consuming. Applying for a new job is almost like a full-time job, to be honest. Be intentional with where you apply to. What I like to do is I had a tracker for myself, the date I applied, the role, and I tried to save the job description as well, because in most cases it kind of just gets lost at some point. So make sure you kind of save these as well, and don't give up. With each experience, try to learn something new. With every preparation, with every resume you tailor, you are learning something new. You're learning about the industry, you're learning about the role. Try to think about, based on the job descriptions, what are you potentially lacking? What are they asking for that you may not have? And go out there and take these learning courses. There's tons of free learning courses available. IBM has something called Skills Build, where you can earn badges and certifications for free for students. So utilize all of the different learning content out there to continuously upskill as well. With every new thing you learn, you're able to put this on your resume now, you're able to continue applying. And you definitely will be applying to so many roles. I know recruiters and hiring teams will take months in some cases to get back to you, but try your best not to get discouraged. Go on LinkedIn, look at someone who's currently in that role you're applying for, and look at their candidate profile. Look at what experiences they have, and try to kind of match your skill set to the best that you can to this. So even though you're kind of in that applying stage, use the time to also continuously upskill and learn, because your curiosity and passion will go a long way when you're able to kind of continue to add things onto your resume.
Yeah, definitely. So something happened to me a few years ago when I was applying for a job. I, sent the application in, and then I got a response from them 3 months later, inviting me for the interview. But by then the job description was gone, and I actually couldn't remember what the job description was. So it's a very good idea to document all these things, because sometimes you never know. Things can be slow in the corporate environment. It can take time for applications to then eventually get to the interview stage. Stuart, Christine, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would just kind of mirror what Judith was saying. It's to put a bit of a positive spin on it. Every interview is a learning opportunity. So if you take it as a learning opportunity, I think that will lead you in a more positive direction as well. And it's also a networking opportunity. Maybe it's not a fit right now. Maybe there are skills that you need to develop, and there can be an opportunity down the road. So it doesn't necessarily mean always a flat out no. Look for kind of that positivity in terms of, or even if it kind of gives you a little bit more passion to really want to work for that company after having the interview and you're really blown away, what can you kind of step back and develop in your own skill set to go back to that company one day and try again if it really feels like it's a fit for you. So I think the idea that Judith was sharing about look up profiles that you can match to. How can you develop yourself to get there? I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah, and you know what? We live in this in this age of information democratization now. So you can go on Coursera, Udemy, NGX, so many free courses available. Basically, there's so much information that you can just learn and upskill yourself. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and just to add, I think one of the things too, by looking at, as Judith mentioned, it can be a job, a full-time job. I think it's just reviewing what type of roles you're applying for. So if you are new and you don't have much experience, not, I guess, being so precious on applying for one title only. It's about kind of getting that experience in a corporate environment and looking at multiple avenues of employment. It's not just, hey, I have to be this one thing and that's all I'm going to apply for. Because if you don't have experience or you're dealing with other candidates that may have some more experience than yourself, like it's going to be really difficult. So I think it's about looking at opportunities where you can get in and again, the other side of the coin too is networking internally, and that's what we talk about as well. Once you're in an organization, you can meet people and find out more about them, and it's a little less. It's a kind of, I always say, a warm call rather than a cold call, because people in the organization know you. I know for us, financial services and insurance, a lot of people that applied for jobs here that couldn't get the job they wanted, but then they internally moved into those roles after the fact. So it is important to kind of put that in perspective and look at, hey, maybe I don't have the perfect ideal experience to be, in finance or in a manager in consulting. So look at other avenues to kind of get in there rather than just one approach.
Yeah, so it's about getting your foot in the door, right?
Yes.
And then working your way up or laterally, whatever makes sense. I think what I've heard from all three of you, whether it was your answer to this question or other questions, is just the importance of networking. And I know that that's something that's kind of like a science and an art, because there are certain tips you can follow to network, but it really does come down to how you can build rapport with someone, during a coffee chat. And so this one question is about how you can maintain and deepen your networking connections. Is there any advice you can offer on how someone can do that?
I'd just take a stab. I think going to York and attending type of these events and these experiences are very helpful. York does a wonderful job in providing lots of opportunities, whether it's the career fairs they have on campus or other events. I think we always talk about it, how, we don't realize all the, bells and whistles and all the services are available to us till after we're gone through university. So I think there's a lot of things, if you just look into the various career sessions / all these things you're doing right now, it's helpful to kind of in person meet and kind of can make those connections.
Definitely. Christine, Judith, do you want to add anything?
Nothing more on my end.
Yeah, I would agree. I just think, to your point, it is very important to build those networks. And so any opportunity you have, definitely extend yourself to meet new people.
And I think, it's also important to be prepared with good questions. And that was something that had come up even with a previous question, whether it's an interview or networking. And there is one question here about asking good questions at interviews. So the person who asked this question said that this is something that they're nervous about. And so could you elaborate more on what kind of topics would make sense and maybe give a few examples of what these questions could be?
For sure, I can go first. So one of the questions I like to ask is, after the interview, when you have that time for questions, I like to ask the question where, based on the interview, do you have any hesitations or concerns about my skills to do the job? And this is a perfect time for to understand where you might lack any skills and be able to address it right at the interview as well. So that will help the interviewer in understanding, this person is a go-getter. They want to know what skills they're lacking and they want to address it right at the interview, which is a really good way to kind of show your confidence and ability to do the job. And you can also, in your thank you note, follow up and reiterate how you have the direct experience, relevant skills, or transferable skills to do that job and take away any hesitation. So that's a really good question that you can ask. Anything to do with the industry would be very important. So IBM's in the tech industry, so a lot of tech layoffs are going on. You can ask questions like, given the tech layoffs in the industry, how has this impacted the team? How has this impacted the role? So really showing that you know about the industry, you know everything that's going on, and you're very intentional with your questions as well. And everybody is probably familiar with generative AI, ChatGPT. So asking questions that are very relevant to the industry to be able to showcase that, you've done your research about the industry, and now you want to know how this has impacted the direct team or, the manager or what the experience would be. So asking questions in a sense that shows you've done your research and also very intentional in kind of learning more and shows your curiosity and passion definitely will add value to your interview.
Right. I really like that. It's almost like turning the interview on its head and asking point blank, what do you think of me as a candidate? And, what's missing? Is there something missing? Stuart, I can see you're nodding along. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think that asking questions is always important. It's to Judith's point, having one or two as your default and just have it ready to go. You kind of see the flow of the conversation. Sometimes you have something that pops up, but if you don't, it's good to kind of have one or two ready to go. I talked a little bit before about the manager and asking them a question about, their leadership style, their working style. Why did they choose to be in this industry? Why are they here? What did they see as an opportunity for yourself?
Mm.
So that type of stuff is also helpful too if you kind of have a loss of words during that moment. So it's a good one too to kind of ask a little bit about them, and it's get the manager to find out more about them as well. So as I think you mentioned, Ali, this is a two-person streak. A relationship working can go up both ways, and you want to make sure that this is also a right fit for you. So if
Right.
you feel the manager is not going to support you and provide you with that type of opportunity, it's better to know now than to take that role and kind of discover that later on.
It's definitely important to have these ready though beforehand, like doing a little bit of prep work for this part of the interview. I think that's important. Christine, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say to Stuart's point, have your kind of 2 to 3 go-tos always kind of locked and loaded that you can confidently pull out and have a conversation about. I think the management style is really important. Even asking a manager, what's your path? Like what got you to where you are today? Better understanding, were they more for specifically for our business? Did you have a service background, a parts background, a sales background? What kind of led you? What were the foundations or building blocks to get you to where you are today?
Right.
And or even who has had a similar kind of background or role, and where have they gone from the role that I'm applying to today? Where are they 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? And what does that look like for me if I were a candidate to kind of follow that pattern? It gives that candidate more insight in where they could be in that 5 to 10 years.
Right. Okay. Another question that we've gotten is about volunteering opportunities. So do you believe that this is something that helps boost your resume, especially if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of work experience?
I would say yes. Volunteering is a great way to give back. At IBM, it's huge. Giving back is huge, and I believe all corporations definitely have a volunteering or give back program. But with these volunteer roles as well, you are gaining skills, whether it's the soft skills or any tech. Depending on where you volunteer, you're gaining skills. So when you put this on your resume, tailor it to the role you're applying to highlight the skills that you've gained from the role. We always like to see a well-rounded application. I know Christine and Stuart mentioned this before as well. We always like to see a well-rounded application. So definitely take the time to give back and use that volunteer opportunity to be able to showcase your skills on your resume.
Totally makes sense. Since we're actually getting a lot of questions, this is amazing engagement we're seeing from the crowd. I'm going to do a little bit of a rapid fire, and I'm going to shoot one question per panelist. So, Christine, this next one's for you. How do you navigate ghost job postings? It is very discouraging to put time into an application for a job that doesn't exist.
Very fair. So for a ghost job posting, I would make sure that you are looking at the career page. And I say that because a lot of companies will use platforms like LinkedIn or Indeed to support the application process. And if there's a specific trigger kind of on the back end that closes that job, you want to make sure you are checking with the accurate career page of that company before you start building anything. Yes, LinkedIn and Indeed are great resources to apply on, but I always try to encourage candidates to go to our actual career page because you will get the most up-to-date information on what's available on and where to apply.
Right. It's important to do some due diligence before
Absolutely.
Jumping into working on an application. Stuart, given the recent waves of layoffs, how would you suggest new grads with little or no experience compete or stand out against applications from those that have experience in the field and are now also in the job market?
Yeah, I think we talked about it before. It's kind of repositioning what type of opportunities that you are applying for. Intrinsically, it's always going to be difficult to compete against someone that has the technical experience or has corporate experience. So again, I think it's about pivoting to just different opportunities. And when everyone's going, for example, in financial services, everyone's going to banking. it's good to look at the market inefficiencies and look, insurance is a good place to be in. Look at kind of where things are going, and when everyone's going one direction, apply and look at other opportunities. I think that's the best way to go, looking at it and being flexible on what those opportunities are. There's a reason why everyone starts, when they want to be in a bank, for example, there are a lot of tellers. It's not because they want to be a teller, but because that's the foot in the door and they can get,
Right.
other opportunities to be there. So think of that similar mindset of looking to get into that organization. And then you can, again, all the internal postings will be available and they're not available to everyone else. So it's about kind
Right.
of looking at different opportunities.
You have to be a little scrappy, and yeah.
Everyone's going one direction. You should go the other one. Zig and zag, right?
Yeah. Judith, any advice about what you would want to add to your resume while you've been looking for a job and there's a break on your resume? I feel like this is something that a lot of people ask about.
For sure. Um, Depending on what the reason for the break is, I've seen people put in brackets, took break for health reasons or X reasons. So don't get too, bogged down about putting that on your resume. Definitely, if you have a valid reason, put it on the resume, but be prepared to speak to it. Talk about, what happened. We understand that things happen, life happens, and you need to take time off, you need to take a break, but be intentional with your responses, maybe at the interview or maybe when you speak to a recruiter. Talk about what you did, but also what you learned. Maybe you were laid off, but you took that time to upskill. Focus on the positives and what you actually had to do at the time to upskill and continue moving on. So in brief, you can put in a quick response that you were on a leave or a break for a certain reason. Or if you don't, usually recruiters or hiring managers may pick up on it and ask you anyway, or
Right.
try to address it up front at that screening stage when you're kind of doing that tell me about yourself, where you're able to address why there might be a gap.
Yeah, that's fair. Christine, for a beginner that hasn't used LinkedIn as a tool while in school, how do you network with people online beyond simply adding them to join their circle of connections? Is there a right way to open a conversation?
Sorry, is that in terms of adding people to LinkedIn or networking with like outside of LinkedIn as well?
I guess I think it's like networking on LinkedIn if you don't have experience doing that, and adding connections. Because sometimes when you're sending an invite to a connection, you can
Yes.
personalize by adding a little note. Is that the right way to do that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think it depends what you're comfortable with. I see both. Sometimes even me myself, I'll get either a message with it or not. I don't think it hurts to put kind of a quick little blurb that's kind of an easy one sentence read to kind of initiate a conversation. But it's all kind of, I would say, what you do as the follow-up as well. If you're just looking to connect so that you can maybe have a view of their connections or their background or what they're interested in. It's all about kind of what you're looking for in terms of kind of continuing that conversation or using it to leverage your kind of bigger network circle.
And just a quick piggyback off of that, if you are trying to be active on LinkedIn, please put a picture of yourself there. It's very difficult for us. We don't know whether you are, real or not. So we it happens. So, do that profile, do the steps are required, put a picture of yourself on there in a professional way, a headshot of sorts, and that will also make big headway. If you don't have it, you will notice there's a drop-off response because we don't know, frankly, whether this is a real account or not. So we also have to think about that too. Sorry.
Plus, I think humans are inherently visual creatures. Like, it's always nice to put a face to a name. So I think just based on that, it's good to have a picture. Stuart, are there things you wish you had known before starting your first job after school? And if so, could you share some of those thoughts?
Oh my goodness, I wish I could say this. Yeah. So great question. I think at the end of the day, I tell the students that work in our program that, in first year, just get whatever you can and discover whether you want to be in an office job or not. I think part of these summer student opportunities, whichever they are, is basically for you to discover whether you want to do 37.5 hours per week in an office environment. And if you don't, you can pivot really quickly. The worst thing you can do is spend 4 years in university, or like myself, an additional year and a bit to get a certificate, to recognize, oh, I don't want to do this. I should do something else, and be trapped in that capacity and go, now what? So I think this is a great opportunity for you to go out and even if first year you don't find something corporate, as we talked before, volunteer, a summer job, placement, working at camp, doing anything is important for you to kind of get that under your belt and get that experience to recognize whether this is a field or something you want to do. And it'll all help you out during your interviews and speaking to that going forward. But yeah, I wish I was a little more proactive in the job market when I was a little bit younger in university. I was not thinking about co-ops or opportunities like I think everyone else is now. And I would say look at that path. And again, it took me a while to find a job in HR after I graduated because I wasn't as good at networking. So again, I would say that's the best way to think about it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You know what? I think that not no one, but not most people aren't very proactive when they're at that age and when they're starting university. So I think this is really helpful.
Yeah, and I make the joke that if I would have known what I know, maybe I should have been an underwriter. Like it's like, oh, that's a really steady job. I'm like, oh man. So it's kind of what I tell the kids all the time. It's like, look at the market deficiencies and go there because we're going to need you.
And just to piggyback on Stuart, something for me is I didn't realize how many new grad programs are out there, how many entry-level roles are out there. There's tons of roles out there. You just need to know which companies are hiring and look it up by, certain titles. So if you type new grad, there will be a lot of roles that come up. IBM posts with entry-level or associates. So try to look those up as well and follow a bunch of companies. Most of them will have a campus recruitment section, which outlines new grad programs. And there's tons of programs and resources available that you should definitely research and take use of.
Yeah, that's a really good point about timing because again, those programs sometimes are a year in advance. So you want to make sure that you're kind of aligned and look at those programs. And a lot of them too will still accept you even though you've graduated. So just looking at the criteria of what it is and being proactive in a year in advance. Because again, those early new grad programs are amazing, and I tell the students here, like, that's what you should be targeting once you've finished working with us in the summer or when you graduate, because it's very focused and it provides you a lot of excellent opportunities.
All right. All right, so we're almost out of time here. Can't believe the hour's gone by so quickly. So we'll do two more questions. The next one's fairly simple. Would all the panelists be open to connecting on LinkedIn afterwards?
Absolutely.
Yes, please include a picture, please. Thank you.
All right, and then the final question. Let me see here. In the event that you apply for a role and don't receive much feedback, that is not a straight up rejection, but 2+ months without response, how should you follow up? And is there a number of times that you should follow up before you stop?
I would recommend, after you've kind of sent your thank you note, I'll give it at least a week or two to hear back. Also work with your recruiter to see what the timeline is as well. So usually recruiters should be good at letting you know if you'll hear back in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the case may be. So definitely give them that time to, the week to pass, 2 weeks to pass, whatever timeline they set, and then follow up with them. I would say if it's been 3 months and you're still waiting, then that's a really long time, probably not a good experience as well. You feel free to follow up though, because you've put your time and effort into it. You're not asking for much. You're only asking for an update, which you deserve to have. So don't be annoying about it and email them every week. If they set a timeline, follow up within that timeline. If anything, give it an extra week or two to follow up before you hear back.
Fair. All right, that was a very insightful Q&A session. Thank you so much to our panelists and all the attendees who had questions today. Before we conclude, I just want to ask the panelists if they have any words of wisdom that they'd like to leave the audience with today. Judith, why don't we start with you?
I would say don't give up. Just continue to apply to all the different roles out there. There's tons of opportunities for you. You will find the perfect role for you when the timing is right. I'm a true believer in things fall into place when the timing is right, but that doesn't mean you stop doing what you're doing. You continue looking for jobs, you continue applying, interviewing, and upskilling as well.
Definitely. Success is where luck meets opportunity, right? Christine?
Yeah, I would mirror that in saying don't give up. And sometimes the first opportunity isn't the dream job, but it's such a learning opportunity of what is a fit, what's not a fit, and can help launch you into your forever career. So take it day by day as you move through the process, because there is a path for you and it will all click and connect. And 5 years down the road, you'll sit back and understand. So be patient, give yourself grace, and move through the process.
Patience and grace, definitely. Stuart?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it. It's about practice, it's about research, and about passion. Those are the three things I think three of us have kind of talked about. Just do your research, practice what you're saying and how you're saying it to the mirror or to your friend or whatnot, and then bring the passion you have, because there's no bigger advocator for you than you. So I think those are things that we'd go leave you with.
Definitely. Practice makes perfect, and passion. And with that, our event today is concluded. Judith, Stuart, and Christine, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and sharing your stories, your knowledge, your insight. I think this has been a phenomenal session, and I think everyone's learned a lot from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
To our attendees today, you can join our LinkedIn group or follow us on Facebook by searching York University Alumni, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at York Alumni. Feedback about this or any other programming is welcome and can be sent to us on our social channels or email us at alumni@yorku.ca. Before you go, join us on March 26th for our next Level Up event, how to accelerate your career with personal branding. Registration for this event will be open in early March, so stay tuned. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.